Jackie is a fantastic registered dietitian that works with runners to help with their speed and just to help them have the right nutrition for running, whether it be walking or running as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just to make sure you're properly nourished to do the right things.
For life.
What'd you say?
For life.
For life, exactly. Not just for a season, but for life. And so
thought we'd start with a couple just different topics. One thing that we thought it would be fun to talk about would be carbohydrates.
Yeah.
So
the big one.
The big
Are carbs bad for us?
They're so bad for us. You know, that's what popular culture would have you think, right? Like
right,
was a thing, and now keto is a thing, and there's always South Beach was a thing for a while. There's always like the latest diet fad tends to villainize carbs. Like they're so bad for us, but carbs are what actually give us energy, and they're a primary energy fuel for us when we're on a run. So we store carbohydrates in our muscles, and so we use them up when we're running, and then when we're done running, those stores have become depleted, or we've used some of them, so we need to replenish them, and we have to eat some carbohydrates in order to get that energy back into our another thing that I think a lot of people don't know is that your brain actually relies on carbohydrates for energy.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it can't use other sources. So your brain has an absolute requirement for carbohydrates. So I don't know if you've ever had a day where, like, you didn't eat very much in the morning, or like you skipped a breakfast and you had a really light lunch, and by the end of the day you felt just kind of like foggy and you just couldn't think straight and everything. It could be that you didn't quite eat enough carbohydrates, and then you're more likely to, you know, crave things. You know, get home from work or school, you know, and you're like, oh my goodness, you know, you're stuffing your face with whatever, like potato chips or cookies, or, you know, snacky foods are in your cupboard, because usually snacky foods are full of carbs, and it's just your brain, like, it just needs the carbohydrates.
Right. And that's, gosh, I never sort of thought of it like that. So with diets that restrict you from carbs, do people solely feel, what I just said, mind blown? Yeah, because I did not realize that either. So for those that are on diets that sort of restrict your carbs, do you feel, I wonder if people feel more foggier, like if their minds feel like why people sort of have headaches and stuff like that? Is that because their brain feeling deprived?
Yeah, so you will have like those mental side effects, especially the first couple days and maybe even week or two of like a keto diet. And there are like metabolic adaptations that your body can go through, you know, that is way too advanced for something like this, but it's not the same as actual carbohydrates. So, you know, and that takes days to like actually get to that point where you've adapted. So yeah, in a day-to-day period, make sure you eat your carbs and don't just save them all for the end of the day, you know?
Spread them out. And I mean, of course we have to have the right carbs, and we'll talk later about how people can find out more about finding what carbs are the right ones to have in your diet. But let me ask you about proteins, because I know that protein is such a great way to repair. Like after we work out, protein is an important piece. Do you agree that protein helps to repair, and that's an important piece as well? And how much we should have after, depending if we go for a mile versus like 10 miles in terms of protein and the amount?
That's a great question. So yeah, definitely you need protein to repair. So after you're done running or exercising, actually the ideal ratio is 3 to 4 grams of carbohydrates for every 1 gram of protein. So a really good example of something like that is chocolate milk. So I know it's been sweetened, but it has that ideal ratio of carbohydrates to protein. So you could do something else. You could do like a fruit smoothie that you make with like a Greek yogurt. So maybe you have frozen berries, and you have some plain Greek yogurt, and then something else with a little bit more carbohydrates, just to amp up the carbohydrate factor. And it's really nice because it's liquid. Some people don't have much of an appetite after.
I never had that problem.
I don't either.
I'm always hungry when I come. I'm ready, especially after I record a video. I'm ready to eat to eat something. So we have a few questions. In terms of brain fog, we had a question, Meeg, that Shayi had asked. Do you have suggestions for food to help with brain fog?
Yeah. So, I mean, I would say make sure that there's a couple things like make sure you're eating regularly throughout the day. Like, don't skip meals. I know it can be really tempting to like skip breakfast, or it's easy, especially if you're like on a diet or something, to like eat really light and then eat heavier later in the day. But your body and your brain really need that energy. You know, you're working, you're in school, you know, you're being active in life. So make sure you're eating regularly. Try not to undereat, and make sure that you're eating balanced meals. So you want some type of complex carbohydrate. So it could be a whole grain, it could be a starchy vegetable, it could be fruit, it could be a little bit of dairy. You want to make sure you get your protein at all of your meals. So protein, if you're vegetarian, could be like tofu or seitan or tempeh. It could be beans and lentils. You could do dairy, cottage cheese, or you know, if you're a meat eater, you could do fish, poultry, chicken. That's poultry, and then a healthy fat. So, you know, avocado, some nuts, some seeds.
How about healthy oils in the food that you're cooking? Does that count? Like if I use grapeseed oil or olive oils when I'm cooking, does that count as a healthy fat?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Awesome.
So those some of those foods too, like have anti-inflammatory properties, but they're also good, have healthy fats for your brain. So talking about brain health in a way. Omega-3 fatty acids like in fish, like salmon and tuna, or some nuts, and some flaxseed, olive oil, really healthy fats that are actually good for your brain as well.
Yeah, awesome. So that definitely will help with brain fog, just having a balanced meals. Because I feel like a lot of times we leave things out of our diets, which is lifestyle. I don't mean diet as in doing a keto or something else, but just in terms of a balanced diet. If we're balanced, we won't have those issues at all. And I noticed that for myself. I know when I'm when I'm balanced with whether it be with working out and eating, my brain, I can sort of think and process so much better. So that's really awesome. Thank you, Jackie. Juanita was saying you talked about the right portions in terms of carbs to proteins. Can you repeat that again in terms of the number? And she just wanted to talk about understanding that piece of it in the portions, the right portions for everything.
Yeah, so I was talking about as far as a recovery snack, the ideal ratio is 3 or 4 grams of carbohydrates for every 1 gram of protein. So, for example, if you're eating like 10 grams of protein, then you want to have 30 to 40 grams of carbohydrates with it.
So after recovering from a run.
Yes.
Interesting.
Ideally, that's within like 30 to 60 minutes. Now, that number of grams doesn't have to be exact. It's more the ratio that's the important thing.
Okay. Just the ratio that has to be. And how does that go with like when you're not recovering, just eating in general? Is there a formula with that as well? Like if I'm eating at normally, not even just recovering, just normal, like breakfast, lunch, or dinner.
Yes. So as far as protein, it's really important to try and spread it out throughout the day and try to get it as evenly spaced between your meals as possible so your body can use it. We don't store protein the way we can store carbohydrates. We can store a little bit of carbohydrates and we can store pretty much endless amounts of fat, right? But we can't store protein. So we have to eat it regularly. But if you think about the typical American diet, you know, typically, let's say, you know, what you see on a commercial, maybe, you know, you've got some type of cereal with, you know, fruit and orange juice for breakfast. And And basically you have carbohydrates on carbohydrates on carbohydrates. And
Right,
no protein.
right.
And then lunch is maybe a sandwich. So there might be a little bit of protein and like some meat or cheese or something. And then dinner is usually like meat and potatoes. You know, it's like, you know, it's very imbalanced where it's like very protein heavy at dinner and almost none earlier in the day. And so I actually recommend that people try and consume at least 20 grams of protein at every meal.
Okay.
Yeah. As far as carbohydrates, that's going to vary a lot depending on your goals, whether you've got performance goals or weight change, how many miles you're running, how active you are. Same thing with the fat too. Like those are going to be, I mean, all of it is individual, of course. There's really no one size fits all to any of this. But regardless of who you are, I mean, you do want to space your protein out more evenly throughout the day.
Right. And I know you coach clients on how to eat better to run faster. And I know all of this has to be included. It makes so much sense if you incorporate the right things and the right balance and how much better your body is able to move. And not even when you think of speed, but just stamina and endurance, etc. Do you agree?
Oh, absolutely. There's a huge difference. Like I was talking to someone the other day and, you know, she unintentionally ate very little early in the day. She wasn't hungry, and then she's a teacher and like, you know, was busy with kids all day in the morning, and then by the time school was out and she was ready to go for a run, like she felt, you know, terrible. You know, she just wanted to go home and like eat out of the cupboard because she was so hungry, you know. And her runs weren't going so great because she was under fueled, and so then she'd eat more later in the day. And, you know, as your body would do, like it's hungry. And it's not that she did anything wrong. You know, she was trying to break out of the cycle. So a lot of us get into this cycle. But once you're able to find that nice balance and schedule that works, you'll definitely notice a difference in performance and how you feel.
Okay. Oh, Juanita said, oh my goodness, this is me. I think I'm under fueled. We need to get you fueled, Juanita.
We need to get you fueled. Come follow me. Send me a message. I'd be happy to help you out.
Oh, that's right. And please, we have to figure out a way to like let people know, like, and I'll link that below so that everyone can go and follow Jackie on Instagram, because her page is filled with so much information about the right foods to eat. Every Friday you have Food Fact Friday. Is that correct? Is it?
Better Food Friday.
Better Food Friday. And so every Friday she'll share foods and just so many things that you share for walkers and runners. Because on this page, on my page here, we have so many different types. We have walkers and runners. And so this is for anyone that moves, right?
Yeah. You're a human.
Right.
I don't know if I can help dogs, you know?
Right. So I know we wanted to also talk about trends as well.
Yeah.
Or if you want to go into another, please do. Does anyone have any more questions? Did we answer everything?
Yeah, pop it in the comments if we have missed anything. Just about trends. Like there's always something trendy, right? But at the end of the day, trends come and go. They're usually very transient. They're usually advertising all this magical stuff like lose 10 pounds in 10 days. I just have to say, like, that kind of thing, it might work, but I mean, really, it's not very sustainable. Oftentimes, it's not very healthy. You know, if you're very, like, attracted to trends like that, I would challenge you to think about, like, how many times have you been attracted to a trend like that, maybe tried it, and, you know, been right back where you started. So I'm all about these like small changes that add up over time, these lifestyle, like it's not a diet. I'm not into a diet. I'm, you know, lifestyle changes that make you feel better, and not just for running, like just for life.
Yeah. I agree. I agree. That's so important. It's about a life thing and just being able to do it throughout and not doing anything that's a fad, because a lot of times you can do that and the weight can fall off and then come right back on so quickly. I mean, when you think about things with whether it be with keto especially, that's one that I feel like take so many of those good foods, and everyone is different, and everyone's body is different, and I don't want to slam anything, but that's one that I was, when back in the day when we had was it Atkins? It was keto was basically Atkins, right?
Yep.
With things like keto, I know that it's so it's scary, because a lot of times you'll start doing that and then you lose all the weight, and as soon as you have something, you gain the weight back, and it's scary. You end up being on this endless cycle where you're almost afraid to eat. And I know for myself, I had lost all this weight. This is about 15 years ago, and I started it, and then someone invited me to a party, and just to have a piece of cake, just from a piece of cake, you should not be gaining 4 or 5 pounds. And it's like your body saying that, it's like keeping it. Is that what happens when we do stuff like that and we gain an enormous amount of weight from eating like a grape? I'm exaggerating, but is that because your body's just like, I'm gonna hold on to everything this has because I'm afraid that that she's not gonna feed me, if she or he's not gonna feed me?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, again, get real into the weeds on like the complex metabolics of it, but there is actual research that shows that kind of thing to be true. And it just, the more you do this up and down sort of diet thing where you lose a lot of weight and gain it back and lose a lot and gain it back, your body becomes much more resistant to actually losing the weight, and your set point just gets a little bit higher every time, and it's just harder to go below that. So
yes, right,
these diets, I mean, it's a billion plus $10 billion, I don't know how many billions, trillions of dollars the diet industry is worth now. I mean, and you think about how many, I mean, if it would really worked, we'd all be super thin.
and yeah, and thin doesn't even mean anything, right? Because thin doesn't even mean that someone's healthy, right? Because someone could be larger and be the healthiest person. It's just their frame and everything. We have a question from James. How about simple sugars? Should we incorporate them at all, or do we get enough through fructose and glucose?
Okay, that's a good question. So there is a place for simple sugars, especially as an athlete, like before a run or during a run, a longer run. I would say that in general, as part of a healthy eating pattern, we want more of those complex carbohydrates, starches, fibers, things like that. But there is a place for like milk. Like, milk has technically a simple sugar. Lactose is a simple sugar, and fruit has simple sugars in it. And I would never tell someone to never eat fruit unless, they were going to have an anaphylactic shock from it or something like that. I think there's a lot more benefits of eating fruit than never eating it again. So I think in general, a lot of us get more than enough simple sugars in the diet because of processed foods. There's added sugars in things like yogurt and ketchup. We were just talking about that. And
yeah, you are.
All, crackers, like things you wouldn't think that they would add sugar to, they do. But those naturally occurring simple sugars, like, there's health benefits to them as well. And again, like I said, there's a place for it in a runner's diet as well.
Yeah. Or walker or anyone. Yeah, exactly. So Phantom, again, I'm glad the info is good for you. So Juanita, hold on, I had a question. Linda said, I did keto and lost weight, but I felt I didn't have as much energy, so I switched over to Weight Watchers. Which Weight Watchers is a more balanced system. Do you agree with that? Are you familiar with Weight Watchers, Jackie?
I am familiar.
Is it pretty balanced?
Yeah. So I think with the keto thing, it probably had to do with the lack of carbohydrates, since that is a preferred energy source, like we said, especially for our brain. So keto, I've heard the same thing from I've never tried keto myself, but yeah, a lot of people tell me the same thing about keto. One thing about Weight Watchers is, and I'm not trying to knock anything that works for someone, because if you find something that really works for you and you have a healthy relationship with your body and you have a healthy relationship with food, then I'm not the person to say, like, shame on you. Like, that's
Right.
the goal, right? Is to have a healthy relationship with
Yes.
body and with food.
Absolutely.
That said, Weight Watchers isn't for everyone. You know, I mean, there are certain things that you can have unlimited because they don't have any points, and some people will just like eat those foods endlessly because, you know, and that doesn't address the underlying issue.
Okay. Okay. With the balancing, because they may not be balanced, because it doesn't, as long as you're in with points, because you could have vegetables all day and be at 0 points, right? But it doesn't address the points. That's the point. So I didn't realize that. So it doesn't tell you, okay, you need to have certain points in carbs, you need to have certain points in fats. It doesn't. Linda, does it do that? Does it tell you that if you have to have a certain amount of carbs, a certain amount of fats, fruit, etc.? And while she's answering, because I'd love, do you know that? Do you know the answer to that, Jackie? Does it tell you that?
I'm not sure. I think Weight Watchers went through like a revamp recently, and I'm not sure what their latest rules are. I know in the past, like, you could like save up points for like the weekend, but that was kind of another thing that didn't sit well with me, because, you know, there's some days that, well, it kind of felt like you would restrict during the week so that you could binge on the weekend, and that just didn't sit well with me. Another thing that I worry about is like, say your points is like 15 a day. I don't know if that's like, I have no idea what their average points are right now, but let's just pretend that it's 15 a day. You know, there might be a day where you're completely satisfied at 13 points, but then you're like, oh, I have 2 extra points. Like, I'm just going to eat whatever because I have 2 points. And then there might be another day where you eat 15 and you're still hungry and your stomach is like, hello, I need food. And then you feel guilty for eating 2 extra points.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I see that.
Yeah. So that's one of the concerns. Again, if it works for you, I don't want to knock it, but that's a word of caution. Yeah.
Because as humans, we're so good about making ourselves feel guilty about
very much so.
about things. Right. And depriving ourselves. Juanita says, can too much fruit be a bad thing with the sugars? Obviously, it's better than refined sugars like in donuts and cake, but she's just wondering if you can go overboard, and if some fruit are better than others.
You know, I'm not really sure how to answer this question, because like, fruit is very good, but if your entire diet was fruit and it wasn't balanced with anything else, I would probably say that's too much fruit. If you wanted to have 2 apples in a day, I would be like, okay, that's fine. You know, you do too. If you wanted to have nothing but apples, I'd be like, okay, well, we're going to miss out on some very key nutrients if we do that. So I don't know if that answers the question.
So look, I'll give you an example of something. A friend of mine, for instance, she won't eat bananas or certain types of fruit because she feels like she gains weight from them, and that she's gotten advice. And this isn't one discussion, but I have a friend that has had that issue where she restricts herself from certain fruits because of the sugar content, where she was told that your body reacts differently to this, like you shouldn't be having, for instance, a banana because that has too much in it. From my thoughts, as long as it's balanced, as long as you're not eating 5 bananas in a day, but if you're keeping to your 3 to 4, 3 to 4, 5 fruits a day?
It's like, 2 to 4 fruits and like 3 to 5 plus vegetables. I mean, like, ideally it's like, 7 to 10 servings a day, more vegetables than fruit.
Right.
The funny thing about, say, bananas, for example, is that when they're very green, the carbohydrates are still starches. So basically, starch is just a long string of sugar molecules, many sugar molecules, all tied together. A very long string of it. And as they ripen, they become so that they're more simple sugars. So simple sugar is 1 or 2 sugar molecules. So but at the end of the day, it's still the same amount of carbohydrates. One is starchy, one is more like simple sugary. Like, your body is still going to get the carbohydrates no matter whether it's like green or yellow. I hate to vilify fruit. people like to like point fingers at bananas because they're so starchy, but if you had an entire watermelon, you'd have just as much sugar and more than if you had one banana.
And your body breaks that down, though. Again, it's when you think of fruit, what your body processes and it stores it and it uses it up. Where it's not just it digests it. Where it's just not just sitting on your body. It actually, right? I mean, that's when I think of that. Just being balanced with it, like in terms of fruit. And answering, of course, you're better in terms of answering that question for Juanita. But I just feel like if you're keeping to that 3 to 5, as long as you're not going overboard with it, should be just fine. But because it does have sugar in it, we definitely know that. Like just because something like with juice, for instance, just because it's 100% juice doesn't mean we can have like 5 or 6 cups of it, right? We know the amount of sugars that we're supposed to have in a day. We don't want to go too far over that. Just staying within the limit. So
it's not like, for example, it's not the banana itself or the glass of juice itself that causes the weight gain. If you eat more than what your body needs, that's what's causing weight gain. I mean, if you could eat 3 bananas in a day and that's it, you're probably going to lose weight because that's not enough calories for anyone. It has nothing to do with the banana itself.
Yeah. Absolutely. We have a few more. James is saying keto. Definitely, he does keto for weight loss, and that's his only reason for doing it for the past 3 years. But there's a significant energy loss, but I only use it for weight loss. Now that I'm at the weight that I want to be, how do I incorporate carbs back into my diet?
Okay, so he's ready to incorporate some carbs. I like it. So
yay!
Focus on the complex carbs. So the, complex carbs are going to be whole grains. So think like quinoa or barley, oatmeal, brown rice or wild rice, starchy vegetables like potatoes or peas, or like winter squashes. Other good carbs are fruits. We've talked a lot about fruits recently. Lentils and beans have good, healthy carbohydrates. So all of these foods that I'm talking about also have all these vitamins, these minerals, fiber. Many of them have a little bit of protein in them as well.
Yeah. And is there an amount that you suggest? Because obviously you don't want to have like 3 cups of quinoa when you're starting off, because it's scary. If you're going from this, you're at the weight that you want to be at. Jumping over and being at that next point, Jack, is very difficult and very scary. So sometimes it's like, what do you suggest as an amount to start with, like that first week, and then how you increase week by week with that?
It would be easier for me to answer if I knew what he did, because there's not like a specific formula, but I would say, work your way up to those carbohydrate foods taking up about 25% of your plate. So if you were to take your plate and portions, like quarters, quarter portion. Probably right now, keto diet, like it's all protein and vegetables is my guess. So I would work my way up to having about 25% of the plate being those complex carbohydrates.
Okay. That's a great suggestion. I like that. It makes it less scary. And would you start out with just breakfast or lunch, or would you do all 3 in doing that?
Probably spread it out throughout the day.
Okay, so 25% for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then slowly increase if you need to. Yeah. Okay. And balance, you would say, is quarter, like in terms of your plate. How do you have your plate, like when you're eating? Would you say you have 25% all around, or do you have like 50% veggies, 25 protein?
So that's a great question. I'd say like always aim for 25% of your plate being protein. Sometimes it might go up to a third, but 25% of your plate should be your lean protein. And then my plate tends to be different a lot based on my training. So if I've got a really easy day, I'm going to have a lot more color, which for me means vegetables. So I'm probably going to have like half my plate be vegetables, and a quarter of my plate be carbs. But say I'm carb loading because I've got an upcoming marathon, like half of my plate is carbohydrates.
Okay, good to know. Good to know. Okay, awesome. Let me see if there are any other questions. Jackie, how do you feel about one meal a day? Oh, don't tell Jackie that.
Again, I'm not here to knock anything that truly works for someone if you have a healthy relationship with your body and with food. I don't think that it works for most people because you end up getting so hungry that you eat a large amount. It kind of messes with your overall metabolism, but when people get over hungry, they tend to eat really quickly. They tend to accidentally overeat. They tend to make choices that they wouldn't make had they been like an appropriate amount of hunger, if that makes sense. Like, you know, when you're hangry, like, I don't know if you ever got hangry, Ludgina. Have you ever been hangry?
People in my house do. I'm not one to get hangry, but
No.
people in my household can get hangry. Like my daughter, she gets. So I'm like, gosh, have a Snicker bar. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But I'm kidding. But yes, I do know.
So when she gets hangry, like, is she going to be as satisfied if you give her like a bowl of grapes versus like she really wants the potato chips?
Right. She better eat the grapes.
Right.
But yeah, right. She'll be more, but in her mind, she wants the chips, right?
Right. So I guess when I'm hangry, like I will get a little feisty. And, you know, I'm a lot more likely to eat something that I wouldn't eat had I eaten when I was like a normal amount of hunger. Like, it's you have a lot less control. Like, say, you're more likely to eat whatever's in front of you. You're more likely to go for the quick options, which tend to be the more processed options. They tend to be higher in fat and salt and sugar. You know, convenient. Like, if you're really hungry, you're not gonna make dinner that takes 30 minutes. You know,
right.
You're gonna, you know, eat chips out of the bag while you like zap something in the microwave.
You just wanna get that in there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, note to self, like that's when you don't go to that's similar to when you go food shopping hungry. Like don't do that. Like you don't want to do that. Lisette has a question. She's allergic to bananas and she's asking what's a good substitute for smoothies. I'll just let you know. And I'm gonna say what I do. What do you typically substitute your bananas?
Please share.
Oh, well, so one thing, avocados is one thing that I may substitute it with, or oatmeal. Dry regular oatmeal actually gives textures your smoothies if you don't mind having that. You don't really taste it at all, but for those that are allergic to bananas or don't have any ripe bananas, or just putting a few, like a tablespoon of or less of oatmeal into the smoothie adds to the thickness for it. That's what my mom put me onto that. How about you?
Yeah. I think oatmeal is a great suggestion. I think avocado is a good suggestion. Another option, especially if you're looking to add like bulk and smoothness, is frozen cauliflower.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, you can't taste it,
okay.
But it kind of adds like some of that like creaminess.
Okay.
And it doesn't, and it just like bulks it up a little bit more.
And yeah, you don't taste the cauliflower, I'm sure. That's a good one.
It's easier, like the riced kind, you know, like the teeny little pellets.
Yes, the ones that come in the packages. You could just use that.
Yeah.
I have to try that. Has anyone else tried that? That's a good suggestion. The frozen bags of cauliflower. Yeah. I like that. So we have a few more questions. James is saying when he increases his fat content, it tends to suppress his appetite. He goes 24 to 48 hours without a meal sometimes.
Oh, wow.
James, I need to have a separate conversation with you.
Yeah, we might have to talk about that a whole different time. Got all kinds of questions.
Yes, I'm sure you do. Okay.
But I understand the fear. for sure.
But he just said he's not hungry, like with the appetite, like simply because he's just not hungry. And it's with the appetite suppressant, with those oils. He's just not. If you're not hungry, do you think someone should eat? Like, what are your thoughts on that? If someone's just not hungry, do you feel like they've gotten used to that? Or do you feel like it's okay if I'm not hungry not to eat? Or do you force yourself to eat?
That's such a good question. Because there's like the full school of thought, like the idea of like intuitive eating. I don't know if you're like aware of this idea of intuitive eating, which is really all about honoring your hunger. And really being in tune with your body's physical signals of hunger. As adults, we tend to suppress those a lot and ignore them. You know, babies, they're great. They're just like, you know, I'm hungry. I need my mom, you know, and then they push her away when they're done.
Yes, right.
And as adults, it's just like, well, I'm full, but, you know, I really want to finish this, you know, whatever it is. So as adults, we're not so in tune. So there is this case for honoring your hunger. But that said, like, honoring your hunger, if you're not hungry for 3 days in a row, like that, something could be going wrong, like something might be happening, like what's going on, and your body still needs food.
Yeah.
You know, like maybe it doesn't need a lot, but your body still needs food. It takes energy for your heart to beat. It takes energy to breathe. It takes energy to just even to get out of bed and walk to the bathroom. And I'm going to guess that you're somewhat active, and you're driving somewhere. So, I mean, you're going from home to somewhere and back, which means you're doing some type of movement. So you are using energy throughout the day.
Yeah, yeah. And so your body should get something, even though maybe saying, you know, not feeling hungry, our body still needs that energy.
Yeah.
So Juanita's asking, what are your thoughts on fasting? Which is, I guess, to that. What are your thoughts on, I guess, intermittent fasting? Because Michelle is also asking, what are your thoughts on intermittent fasting? She came in a little late. But, you know, we haven't talked about that just with this whole thing, with what James was saying in terms of fasting. What are your thoughts on that? Now, Juanita and Michelle, well, Juanita, are you talking about fasting in terms of like intermittent fasting where you continuously do it, or like a fast type thing where it's just like a 24 to 48 hours for like a detox cleanse type of thing? And Linda's so I'll get to Linda has also. Well, we could talk about that. What are your thoughts on intermittent fasting?
So I'll preface again by saying I am not going to knock anyone that has found something that works for them. If you have a good relationship with your body and with food, at the end of the day, the way I view intermittent fasting is that it's kind of like a fancy way of like skipping breakfast. Some people, it does really work for them, but there's nothing magic about intermittent fasting. All it does is shorten the window of time where you're quote unquote allowed to eat. So theoretically, you take in fewer calories. So there's nothing really magic going on. Most diets are based on the idea of a calorie deficit, and intermittent fasting achieves that calorie deficit by limiting the amount of time in which you're allowed to eat. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. It's almost like people think it's magic though.
Right.
You know? Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, if it works for you, I mean, that's fine. There's a couple things that I sometimes have concerns about, like, if you do end up over hungry and you're just like waiting for it to be noon so that you can like, because say your window is like noon to 8 p.m. or something, like, and it's 11:30 and you're just like, oh my God, I can't wait the next 30 minutes because I just need to eat. Like, that's your body's way of saying that you need to eat, you know. It also can promote this relationship where, you know, you try to get whatever you can in during your allowed times. So it's like, instead of so much good food, bad food, it's like good time, bad time. And it's like, oh, I can do whatever I want right now because in an hour I have to be good and I can't eat anything. And so that kind of promotes like an unhealthy relationship with food for some people.
I did it for about a month, and that's where again, I just wanted to try it out because, people had questions. I wanted to see, what it was about for myself. And that's how I felt. Like I was so hungry when it was time to eat. And that window, I was like, oh, I could just eat because I think you almost think like it's magic. Oh, if I eat during this window, I can eat anything that I want. And I'm not saying everyone does this. I was just, for some reason, thinking that way. I just was so hungry. I was just eating, but I'm like, but I can't eat this because it's in my window. If I eat it during my window, nothing's going to happen. But then I would find myself binging, and then I would have more calories during that time than I was supposed to, and it really wasn't working for me. And that's and it may work for others, right? That are doing that, because it is a great way for. I know many people that have been doing it for a while, but that is one of the issues, right? In terms of doing that. So it's just one thing to think about if you do it. Is that piece? Okay.
Yeah. If you're prone to that type of thinking, intermittent fasting might not be best for you. If that type of thinking isn't something that's even on your radar, like it might work for you, and that's great. But if you're someone that's like, ooh, I can do this right now because it's not allowed, and it's so bad, like, then we've got good food, bad food, and that's not
Exactly. Juanita was saying that she tried intermittent fasting and just it didn't do a thing for her. One last question was from Linda. What are your thoughts on eating your biggest meal earlier in the day? I work overnight, so I tend to eat dinner around noon and a snack before work at around 8:30 and my lunch at 3:30 a.m. Could I be doing better? This seems close to intermittent fasting. So your thoughts on eating your biggest meal earlier in the day?
So she's eating a bigger meal around noon, and then eating something around 5 and then 3:30 in the morning.
So yeah, she tends to eat dinner around noon and a snack before work at 8:30. So I guess that's 8:30 p.m. And then she has lunch at 3:30 a.m.
I mean, like.
Yeah, that's so good. That's an 8-hour window. Okay, because she's not eating for 8 hours until she has that snack. So, but I guess the
eating at noon, and then she's eating at like 3:30. So I mean, like most people do have like at least 8 hours ish when they're sleeping that they're not eating.
You're right, because she's having dinner at noon, and if I was sleeping 8 hours, I wouldn't be eating. So she's having that snack at 8:30 when she wakes up, that would be that breakfast,
right?
And then lunch is just in the middle of So the snack is at 8:30 at night, and then lunch is at 3:30 in the morning. Okay,
I think that's fine. I mean, like honestly, I think a lot of people undereat earlier in the day. And, your day might start at noon, and that's fine. Whatever your day starts at, a lot of people undereat earlier in the day and tend to way overeat later at night. And the reason that they're way overeating later at night is because they did undereat so much earlier.
Okay.
And their body's just so hungry that they need food. So I think the idea of eating more earlier in the day gives your body like the food that it needs. You're more likely to be satisfied throughout the day. You're likely to have those end of the day binges, whether your end of the day is at 8 p.m. or whether your end of the day is at 4 a.m.
Right, exactly. Awesome. Yeah, and that's such an important thing, just to, and that balance, right? Because it's still balance. And one thing I had heard in the past was eat like a king in the morning and a pauper at night, right?
Yeah.
If possible. So, but Jackie, while we've talked for a bit, Jackie and I are going to have another webinar on June 9th, and I will give you guys some information. That's going to be something separate, another event. And James, you as well, because James is saying that, can you speak about eating and insulin spikes? That's the purpose for his intermittent fasting. So did you want to talk about that quickly, or do you want to message him? You're welcome, Juanita.
Thank you for coming. I'll talk about insulin spikes a little bit. I mean, so anytime you eat, especially, carbohydrates, you're going to have, so carbohydrates are basically just a fancy way of saying sugar. Like your body's going to break them down into sugars. That's what carbohydrates are. And so those sugars enter your bloodstream. And when your sugar goes into your bloodstream, then your body notices that. It's very smart. And then it sends out insulin. And insulin's job is to go along with the sugar, and it goes along to the cell, and then insulin is like a key, and it opens up the cell so that the sugar can go inside so that you can actually use it for energy.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of how insulin works in a very like simple way. So when you have insulin spikes, you're going to release more insulin the more carbohydrate that you eat.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you're also going to have more insulin spike if you have a lot of simple carbohydrates and simple sugars that you eat very quickly. Like say, for example, you have an empty stomach and you drink a Mountain Dew. Like very simple sugar, you're going to have a ton of sugar enter your bloodstream. You're going to have a big insulin spike.
Yes.
So that you can handle that amount of sugar.
Mm-hmm.
Let's pretend you had a meal that had some carbohydrates that were like healthy carbohydrates, like wild rice and some beans and some, you know, protein, and you had some avocado and nuts. So you had like this balanced meal and you had some veggies on the side, right? Like, yes, you're going to have some carbohydrates, but those carbohydrates take a lot longer to break down into sugars. So instead of having a big blood sugar spike, you're going to have a little bit more gradual one. And it's going to match it. So your insulin isn't going to go like this. It's going to go like this. You know, you have a lot more control that way.
Yeah. Very nice. Nice. I didn't realize that either. Awesome. Jackie, thank you so much. You've been great. And I want to make sure everyone knows, I will leave all of your information. Jackie also has a phenomenal program to get anyone where they need to go. And this was awesome. But I will leave all of your info, your email address, and then you can let others know about the program that you have if they message you about the different programs that you do offer. Okay. And you can find Jackie. Please let everyone know where your Instagram page is as well.
I am on Instagram at fuelbetter.runfaster. Like fuel as in gas. But this it's food fuel.
Yes.
You'll have to join us on June 9th again.
Yes, June 9th. I will leave information about that. And this webinar will be excellent because we'll talk about marketing tricks. We'll talk about how to properly purchase things from the supermarket, what you need to look at when you're buying food in the supermarket, or just types of food you should have in your pantry. Jackie will really break it down in terms of carbohydrates, whole grains. What is the difference between a whole grain and something and a refined grain? Those details. This with drinks and sugar. I mean, there's so much information. It'll be jam-packed with info. If you have any questions, please feel free to send them to me. I will link all of the information so that you can message myself so I can get them to Jackie, or you can message Jackie directly. Okay. Have a great night, everyone. Thanks for being here. Thanks again, Jackie. You've been fantastic.
Yeah, it was fun. Okay.
All right. Bye.